your company news headlines on Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 7 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Late day rally here with the Dow now up by 325 points. Activision Blizzard surging 9.8%. We've got Microsoft up by 0.1%. The UK's antitrust agency agreed with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard to pause their ongoing London appeal over the $69 billion merger, only minutes after a U.S. court decision to move forward with the deal. Today is Amazon Prime Day. Poonam Goyal follows e-commerce for Bloomberg Intelligence.
In 2 days alone, Amazon generates about 8% of its revenues for the quarter. So it is very important. Last year it was estimated that Prime Day, the 2 days alone, brought in about $12 billion in sales. We think it'll be about the same this year.
And you can hear more of that conversation on the Bloomberg Surveillance podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. Shares of Amazon, they're up now by 1.25%. Walmart lower by 0.1%. Target shares, among other retailers, up by 1.2%. Bank of America has agreed to pay $150 million to regulators and $100 million to customers for improperly charging fees and mismanaging accounts and rewards. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says it's fining Bank of America for, quote, systematically double-dipping on fees imposed on customers with insufficient funds in their account. And those are some of the top company stories that we're watching for you at this hour. I'm Charlie Pellet, and this is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Tim Stenevec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, just about 4.5 minutes left in today's trading session. We're going to head over to our TV.
I thought you were going to say just about 4 hours to go until we're out of here.
Not that we're counting. You know, it just gets a little antsy, especially in the summertime. All right, so just a few more minutes. We did see some buying, I feel like, in the last half hour, 20 minutes or so, but we just kind of turned over, just coming off our best levels of the session, but up almost 1% on the Dow. But TikTok, we're waiting for CPI, we're waiting for earnings, big banks on Friday. Having said that, we're also waiting for the Barbie movie.
True. I actually went to the movies last week, and my wife said, do you want to go to the movies? And I said, yes, totally hoping that we could see the Barbie movie, which sounds weird coming out of my mouth and saying it now. I don't know. But,
wait, what's wrong with that?
I don't know. But it wasn't out, so we had to go see Joyride instead.
What's Joyride?
It's about a bunch of Asian American women who go on a trip back to China to try and find one of their birth mothers.
Oh.
But it's like one of these movies that's clearly made for Chinese audiences.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a Chinese propaganda film made in Hollywood.
Yeah,
because it's such a huge market, they want to tap into it, right? So it's like, I don't know, Seth Rogen and some of those funny guys are behind it because it's very raunchy. But the middle of the film, all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, Chinese care more about the collective, you know? They're really worried about the people as a whole. It's more of a holistic thing. I love China so much. So it was kind of weird.
It sounds kind of weird.
Yeah.
Having said that, there's a great story on the Bloomberg that talks about kind of the people that are flocking to lock in tickets for Barbie, right? That opens up this weekend.
Yes. Well,
Barbie
apparently Barbie and Oppenheimer,
right?
Which is
the combination,
like an historic film. Kind of, it's a Christopher Nolan movie.
So it's like,
the guy
honey,
who made...
you go see that movie, and I'll go see this movie.
Exactly. So I guess the idea is, my wife will go see Oppenheimer, and I'll go see Barbie, because she's a much more serious person.
That sounds
and she
about
likes,
right.
You know, nonfiction, and I want to see Margot Robbie and the other guy who's in the movie with her.
Barbie tracking to sell more tickets overall. Low-end estimates showing at least an $85 million opening weekend for that movie, compared with $45 million for Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer, though, it's a Christopher Nolan movie, so you won't be able to hear half the dialogue. How will you know what's happening?
All right, shh. Time to head over to our TV side. We're going to wrap up this trading day. Beyond the Bell starts right now.
Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostic alongside Scarlett Fu We're counting you down to the closing bell, and here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with Carol Masser and Matt Miller. Welcome to our audiences across Bloomberg TV, Radio Originals, and our partnership for those folks streaming on YouTube. Carol, I think since we last spoke, the market perking up just a little bit here. The volume is up, and so are the prices.
Yeah, interesting. We're seeing some buying, as you said, in this last hour or so of trading, just kind of rolling over. So just coming off our best levels of the session. Having said that, again, we're seeing outperformance among some of the financial names, 1.7% higher on the KBW Bank Index. I know CPI is our focus tomorrow, Matt, but we got those big banks reporting later on this week.
Yeah, you know, I came in today and the headline was stocks do a whole lot of nothing as traders wait for the CPI tomorrow. But really, the China story, I think, has driven the trade today. China's so important, Carol.
It is important. Don't you forget it.
You know, I guess recommending very strongly that banks ease the terms on property owners has been seen as a very good sign. Maybe a little bit more stimulus yet to come, says a state-owned Chinese media company. And as a result, you have NYMEX crude up to almost $75 a barrel.
See, it moves markets, Matt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we talk about sort of the idea of what gets priced in, whether there is maybe a little bit of front running coming into not just the economic reports, but the earnings season itself. There are a lot of folks that we've spoken to on Bloomberg Television. I'm sure you've heard from them on Bloomberg Radio to say this earnings season will be about some of that catch up here with corporate fundamentals and multiples. But a lot of investors seem confident that that catch up will indeed occur. We're looking at right now a Dow Jones Industrial Average higher by about 300 points or about 1% on the day as we get the closing bells here in New York. The S&P 500 up for a second day, up by about 0.7% or roughly about 30 points, pinning the S&P 500 right around 44.38 as we wait for these numbers to settle. The NASDAQ Composite higher by 75 points or 0.5%. And outperformance once again when it comes to, I guess, some of the more cyclical sectors, if you will. The Russell 2000 up 1% on the day. Dow Transports, Carol, up 1.4%.
Yeah, good to point out. And as you dig a little bit deeper into the indices, and we're going to get into some of the movers to the upside, to the downside. But if you look at the S&P 500, most names in that index, more than 400 higher in today's session. Same thing for the NASDAQ, Matt. Most of the names in the index, 71 to be exact, to the upside, 30 to the downside. So we definitely saw a more bullish tone in today's trade and pretty broad-based.
Yeah, it was. I mean, everybody is a winner today, right? We're all special. There are no industry groups that fell, although healthcare is barely keeping its head above water. Energy index doing the best. No surprise there with the big gains in oil. You see utilities, industrials, and real estate sort of leading up the charge there. Financials, as Carol, as you mentioned, also doing well, up more than 1%.
All right, folks, let's get to some of the individual gainers. We've all talked about it today, the Microsoft story. A big court ruling, if you will, in its favor in its move to buy Activision Blizzard. Still has to get through the UK regulatory side of it, but having said that, Activision, no surprise as the target here, really outperforming up more than 10% in today's session, so closing just under $91 a share. Electronic Arts and some of the others in the sector also moving higher as a result. Lucid continuing to move higher, up more than 2%. That while Rivian's 9-day rally, I think, came to an end. I just want to quick bring it up.
Yes, it did.
It did, okay. Lucid, though, continuing to forge higher. It's up 9 out of 10 trading days. We're talking about a 50% gain, all since that news of that EV supply chain pack with Aston Martin. JP Morgan, just want to point it out, we talked about the banks, the big banks overall gaining in today's session. Jefferies upgrading the stock to buy from hold, calling it a winner that can keep winning. They also raised their price target to 165 from 149. That stock closing, as you can see, at 147 and change. And one more, Newell Brands, top in the S&P 500, up the most, I think, since February 2022. Canaccord Genuity starting coverage with a buy rating and a $13 price target. The stock closing just below 10, Scarlett.
Yeah, some big names in household, big gains in household names there. You mentioned Rivian, first decline in 10 days, and of course it had gained about 90% in the previous 9 days. So for a change, it is lower. We're also looking at Vox International, the worst performer in the Russell 2000 on day in which the Russell 2000 outperformed the other indexes. The maker of consumer electronics reported a wider quarterly loss and falling sales. Even though supply chain issues have improved, the global retail environment, according to the company, is tough. And JetBlue losing about 2.6% after Evercore ISI downgraded the airline to underperform, saying its balance sheet has gone from bad to worse, average to worse among its peers. And Viridian Therapeutics plunging as much as 20%, the most since 2020. Volume was actually 4 times the 3-month daily average after its preliminary data from the ongoing treatment of its chronic thyroid eye disease was fairly positive, but analysts at Jefferies say that there was some confusion over the placebo comparison, investors not quite understanding what the takeaway therefore is for Viridian.
All right, let's take a quick look at what's happened in the yield space. A little bit less action there here on this day as that holding pattern that I think Matt was talking about at the start of the day, that kind of remained in the Treasury space. The 2-year yield slightly higher here on the day by only about 2 basis points, but you still saw some modest buying across the rest of the curve, 5, 10, 20, and 30-year yields all moving lower on the day.
All right, so you do have a more inverted curve in that case, right? And I was seeing that this morning as yields at the short end of the curve were rising, at the long end of the curve are lower, and that just because basically markets have locked in a rate hike for the end of July, and that's why you want to stay away from those twos.
But I think it's interesting too. I mean, because so many people have started to talk about lengthening duration, and there was an interesting note out saying that the whole T-bill play, basically going on that short end and taking the percent return that you get there, just basically is kind of passé now, and that there's a lot more safety, and for that matter, a lot more return, both on the price and on coupon, by going further out into the 10-year.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense, I would think, but I guess time will tell in terms of, I am curious how long, where do rates ultimately settle and how long do they stay there, Scarlett? I keep thinking about some of the fundamental changes that are going on in society, whether it's energy changes and, globalization and blah, blah, blah. How does that kind of change and that maybe things are different going forward in terms of where inflation settles?
Yeah, I just want to jump in here because we have some headlines here. I'm going to try to parse through them. Directors at 4 regional feds were looking for a 25 basis point discount rate increase. This is according to the meetings for the minutes for May 22nd to June 14th. The Cleveland, Richmond, St. Louis, and Dallas directors were looking for some kind of rate hike. So we go back to that idea that the different Fed...
Unanimous?
Yeah, the different Fed officials, even though they all vote in the same direction, there's a lot of underlying debate, and it's a constantly evolving discussion.
Yeah, constantly evolving, but I don't know. I feel like all of them, I mean, despite the fact that you're starting to see some divergence in the rhetoric, it still seems that the overarching theme is pretty much the same here. And I know there was a lot of hay made when we got the minutes out of the last Fed meeting, but is there any sense that they go into that, July 24th, 25th, whenever it is, 26th meeting, with any real sense of difference or differentiality, I guess, in their opinion about where rates should go?
July 26th.
June, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
June 26th?
That's why we keep
July.
July 26th, that's right.
That's why you keep me around.
Yeah, exactly. You always know what day it is.
By the way, I point out too, we were interviewing a little bit earlier. Andrew left from Citron Research, and apparently I'm told that he actually interviewed with you guys before us. Kind of the warm-up act. Thank you. But it was interesting though too. I mean, because it's funny because he referenced your interview a couple of times during our hours here. He said that you were a little hard on him, Matt.
You know what?
You warmed Matt up.
Yeah,
You totally
exactly. You were poking me about it, so I felt like I got to give this guy some hardball questions. But I felt bad because he looks like he's really been battered down.
Yes, that's what I noticed too. That he's like a shell of his former self.
I'm sure he'll be okay. I'm just getting a nice.
I think he'll be okay as well. I mean, the story starts, our Bloomberg News story starts, he's driving his Range Rover through Beverly Hills. So I think he's going to be all right.
Okay.
Well, we talked a lot about collusion, or working with others in terms of a trade. And, he said, he kept making the argument about, when somebody's bullish about something or talks about a stock that they like.
He said, if I want to buy Apple, Romaine, I'm going to call you up and say, I like Apple. Do you like Apple too? Yeah, I like Apple too. Is that collusion? Is that market manipulation?
And the other thing we should point out too, not a lot of people, we don't really know the details of the investigation. We know it has to do with this idea of whether there was sort of some cooperation, let's just use that word, but how deep that investigation goes and whether it even involves him. Remember, this is kind of a pretty broad investigation of short sellers writ large, and it includes basically all the big names that we talk about in the media here. So, who knows exactly what the DOJ knows or SEC knows. Maybe they don't know anything and they're just fishing, but at some point we'll find out maybe.
That's what I felt was lacking. That was the one thing that we were saying to one another, the case. Hey, show of hands, Barbenheimer, who's going to see both Barbie and Oppenheimer?
I will go see one
I'm going to see one of them.
I'll probably see one of them as well. Everyone say which one you're going to see.
I'm going to go see the dark one, which I'm told is Barbie.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go see Barbie. My wife is going to see Oppenheimer in the same studio.
I'm wearing pink on Friday. I'm just warning you all. All right, guys, that's a wrap.
Is that a challenge?
If you wear pink,
It is, actually.
I will
Okay.
wear it. We all should wear pink on Friday. All right, that's a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, and of course, Bloomberg Originals. We will see you again at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Valley, Idaho, for investment bank Allen & Co.'s annual gathering of billionaires. They focus on media, social, AI, entertainment, also keeping her eye, as she has for a long time, on all things media. A top-ranked analyst who has watched, as we said, the media, entertainment, internet space for years. She's well-known Needham & Company's senior media analyst, Laura Martin. Her take on the Walt Disney Company definitely caught our attention. Bob Iger already on site at Sun Valley, and Laura is joining us from the West Coast, and we so appreciate her time. Laura, thanks for joining Matt and myself. We're all kind of waiting to see what comes out of Sun Valley, especially when it comes to the Disney Company. You, in some recent commentary, talk about that what really needs to be done is a sale of the company. Walk us through it.
So I think that these large entertainment companies can no longer actually afford the economics to compete against Amazon and Apple, which never ever need to make money from actually content creation, because they have like a new device called like Vision Pro over at Apple, great example, where they need content in order to drive adoption of a device that's brand new. So that content is worth more to them, especially if they can do exclusive content for those new goggles that Apple is trying to drive adoption for. Worth a lot more, and you never need to make money from content. As we know from these standalone content companies, they're all losing money thanks to streaming. So the economics have really gotten compressed in content. So we think they need to be purchased by larger companies that have sister subsidiaries that can fund them.
Now, is this Laura? Paul Sweeney tells me you're his favorite analyst, so you must know a lot more about this industry than even he does. But when I hear about a device company looking to buy content for exclusivity, I think instantly about Microsoft and its attempt to buy Activision, which right now looks pretty good, but it didn't look that great for a while, and it still would be a problem if they wanted Call of Duty exclusively on the Xbox. Won't this be, an issue for the FTC and for other regulators if, for example, an Apple tried to buy a Disney?
Yeah, so good question on the regulatory front. First of all, as you know, these kinds of things take multiple years. So let's see who's in the president's seat, because that person appoints the head of the FTC, the DOJ. So if we end up with a Republican president, then suddenly like all bets are off in terms of allowing consolidation. Even if we stay with the Democratic regime, I think one of the differences, remember when Comcast was allowed to buy NBC? They said, look, you can have no exclusive content on Comcast rails, meaning the video, like the wires, for 7 years. And after that, you can. So that's they have a way to make behavioral changes to make sure they can just force Apple to sell Disney content to everybody at the same price. But as you know, if Apple buys Disney's content, it's a transfer price. So they can double the price of Disney content. Yeah, by the way you make money in content is sell it to everybody. So Apple really isn't incented to not sell it for a price to everybody. It's just that if I was Apple, I would have those fabulous storytellers at Pixar make 3-minute shorts that are only available on, and probably could offer it to anybody else, but who else is buying a 3-minute short from Pixar? Probably nobody, except for putting it on the goggles, I would guess.
That's legit what goes around comes around, right? Because Pixar, Steve Jobs sold Pixar to Disney. Right. And it would be hilarious if Tim Cook then bought it back.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I so agree with that.
Well, and part of it, and so much of that happened because of Iger's relationship with Steve Jobs, right? And I do think about Iger and his relationships with lots of folks. Having said that, one thing that Disney, Laura, is so well known for buying some kind of content and putting it at the theme parks and making movies and selling stuff and blah, blah, blah. Is that a good strategy for Disney?
For Disney or for Apple?
Well, for Disney, does it still continue to be a good strategy in terms of how they do it?
look, I think the biggest question for Disney is how do you invest in this company today when you do not have a permanent CEO and you do not have a permanent CFO? And as we know from the failed attempt of Disney trying to replace Iger for a decade and then picking a guy that didn't last 2 years, this issue of succession at the Walt Disney Company is a really hard problem to solve. It becomes an easier problem to solve if it's a division of a larger company, because now you just need a division head. You don't need a world-class politician, which is what Disney requires at the top level. So I think it solves one of the big problems, which is it gives Disney a more permanent management structure and a clear sense of strategic vision if it's part of something larger. Right now, you have no idea what you're buying because you don't know who's in charge.
Do you think Bob was brought back to sell the company?
To sell it? No, I think it was brought back because the guy in the seat, Bob Chapek, was destroying value at the speed of light, and Wall Street had lost all confidence in him.
Is there any way to make money if they stay in this business? I mean, is the streaming business, can that be profitable? I always think about ESPN, like I would pay so much money if I could stream all of ESPN's content without having to buy a cable TV package.
So maybe, but the problem is, as you know, media bundles double economics. So when you unbundle ESPN, you know that destroys value because now they're not getting paid $12 a month for every cable subscriber, whether or not they use it or not. The minute you unbundle it, you've got to take that price up 2-3x. So suddenly you may say today you'd be willing to buy it, but if the price point was $100 a month, you might not be so excited.
Then I'd rather get the cable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the answer is capitalism writ large has a lot of trouble funding negative growth businesses. And right now that linear TV ecosystem is really weighing on the revenue growth line of these big conglomerates like Warner Brothers and Disney and Paramount. And if you can put capital to work in something that's clearly growing, that's worth a lot more than something that has these declining, that has declining revenue or just single growth.
So Laura, do you anticipate something coming out of Sun Valley, or what are you watching for to come out about Disney?
I hope they all get bought. I hope they all merge and they all get bought. I hope Sherry Redstone sells because she's the smallest. But I hope they all get purchased. And I think the good news is, I mean, there's a serious brain trust. Like, John Malone is a large personal shareholder of Warner Brothers. I think all these guys are deal guys, right? What's a film? It's a bunch of deals. It's a bunch of contracts. So they're all deal guys at some level. And so I hope they all understand that they've got to get bigger to save costs, or they've got to sell out to somebody that doesn't need to make money in the content business. But they are not, I do not think these are standalone companies for the next 3 years. I do not think they can be. Wall Street
including Netflix. Netflix has to get bought too. Who's the taker for that?
Well, it could just merge with Warner Brothers, or it could buy Paramount and actually have a library of IP rather than always renting other people's IP. All of these companies make more money together than they do separately.
Hey, last year the boy that everybody talked about was Elon Musk, right? And Twitter.
The boy.
I can see
Imagine if it were reversed.
I know.
Okay.
Hey, we women have dealt with a lot for years and decades.
Fair enough.
Having said that, now we're all talking about Meta and Threads. What's your take on that, Laura?
So as you know, we have wrongly, we have an underperform on Meta because we're saying, look, we don't think its social network business has a terminal value because we think TikTok's going to win. But I got to say, I sort of think Elon Musk, in blowing up Twitter in a series of bad execution moves, actually has left a huge hole in the market where there was clearly consumer demand for a platform that met that, but it couldn't generate ad revenue because of the fact that he sort of let in the crazies once he got in and didn't have content moderation. So advertisers abandoned ship. So there is a need by advertisers to meet that need. And guess what? Facebook is best in class. It's sort of guaranteeing walled garden access to premium advertisers. He has 1 million advertisers, so he's got brands all the way down to long tail. I think Meta does that really well. And we know they're good at ripping off other people's ideas because they did it with Snap and Instagram. So they are
And
good
with Facebook, that was Friendster.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's their core skill. fast following and improving on somebody else's idea. So I think Elon Musk might have just lost all of his financiers $40 billion.
No one like you.
Wow.
So much fun. Thank you so much. Laura Martin, be well. Thank you for finding time for us. Senior media analyst at Needham & Company, just knows this world so well. Joining us on Zoom from Los Angeles. Carol Massar, Matthew Miller. This is Bloomberg.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It's 4:21 on Wall Street, a Tuesday rally. It is on to the CPI report. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all surging today. S&P was up by about 0.7%, higher by 29 points. The Dow up 0.9%, up 317 points. NASDAQ, the composite index, up 75, up by about 0.5%. The stock market did finish higher before tomorrow morning's CPI report that is expected to show a slowdown in inflation, which will help shape the outlook for the Fed's Fed's next steps. Now, a survey conducted by 22V Research shows 65% of respondents believe the core CPI will be lower than consensus. 10-year yield, 3.97%. The 2-year, 4.88%. Of course, that number drops at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. Complete coverage here on Bloomberg Radio. Spot gold up $6 the ounce to $19.32, up by about 0.3%. West Texas Intermediate crude close to $75 a barrel, up 2.5% today. WTI now at $74.79. Activision Blizzard shares up 10% today as Microsoft won a court's okay to proceed with its $69 billion takeover deal. Again, recapping, S&P up 29, up at 7/10, higher by 0.7%. 10-year yield 3.97%. That 2-year 4.88%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, I feel like Laura Martin really set us up really well for someone who's got a really tough gig right now. You're chewing, aren't you? Nerds again. Is it nerds?
No.
What is
It's a nut mix.
It's a nut mix. From nerds to nuts we go. That's Matt Miller. Having said that, we did say this is a tough gig. Ed Ludlow, he's on the ground in Sun Valley, Idaho. He's co-host of Bloomberg Technology. Let's head to Idaho. Ed, great to have you here with us. We just talked with Laura Martin of Needham. Hey. So remind everybody, we want to get into some of the specifics and who you're seeing, but just remind everybody about what this thing is about and who's there.
No, I listened to that conversation with Laura Martin, who I've spoken to a number of times, right? She summed it up so well. But this is summer camp for billionaires. And historically, there's been a focus on TMT, technology, media, telecoms, and potential M&A within the industry. It's hosted by Allen & Co., the boutique investment bank. They have many of their clients here, interesting individuals, executives, leaders from the world of technology, and they bring them together every summer. And what's so interesting, actually, I've been coming for a few years now, and each of the past few years, there's been one standalone story. In 2021, it was the fallout between Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook, and we were coming out of the pandemic. Last year, all about Elon Musk buying Twitter, and remember, Elon Musk was here. But this year, there are many stories unfolding. It's going back to kind of the legacy of what Sun Valley's all about, and there is a lot happening in the TMT space right now.
So it's a lot of deals people there, as Laura Martin was telling us, and I wonder if any deals are expected to get done. Are there any companies sort of on the block or any buyers looking for a target?
Yeah, a really good example is the future of Hulu. I don't know how much you guys stream Hulu, but it's a complicated situation where Comcast retains a third ownership of Hulu. Disney owns the other 2/3, but Comcast has an agreement where it has the right to require Disney to buy out its share, take over the property entirely. The valuation for Hulu right now is around $28 billion, and we get a sense that for Disney, that's too high if they were to buy out the remaining third. I understand from sources that Comcast Brian Roberts isn't even going to be here this week, but it's definitely one where people are saying, could something happen there? Beyond that, Activision Microsoft is the big story, right? It's not just in the news cycle. Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision, just walked past me, and I am going to be speaking to him later in the week, but Microsoft Satya Nadella is here, and of course we got that decision from a California judge, San Francisco judge, to go in favor of Microsoft and Activision and reject the FTC's proposal for a temporary pause on that deal moving forward. So it's just so interesting to have all those players here this week.
Did Kotick have a smile on his face?
Oh, ear to ear. I'm serious. Ear to ear was the smile on his face. There are still some really serious questions on that deal, by the way. Remember, the UK regulator has requested a stay of litigation, but they still have to appease that regulator to get this deal done.
What do you think the UK regulator wants? What would be a good bone to throw?
Great question, Matt. Based on the conversation I had with Bobby Kotick in April, remember he came on Bloomberg Television with me, he was really wound up about how much the UK CMA, Competition Markets Authority, leaned into cloud-based gaming. I love video games, but the video games industry is massive, and cloud-based gaming is a really small part of it. The logic behind Microsoft buying Activision is largely that Activision owns King, the studio that develops Candy Crush, which is a mobile games studio. They have many mobile game properties. And so Kodak was really wound up about the focus of the CMA on cloud. But cloud's interesting because it's a nascent space. There are more players. And I think that what the CMA wants is a demonstration from Microsoft and Activision on a compromise. You'll know that Call of Duty, it's a big game people play around the world based on war and fighting. One compromise that the parties offered was to allow rivals like Sony and Nintendo to offer Call of Duty on their platforms. That might be something. I believe CNBC reported this morning that the parties had offered the UK CMA divestiture of some kind, divestment of some kind as an option, but we haven't heard any more about that.
Right.
I was talking to you earlier today, Ed, and I asked who's going to be, the sort of king of the hill there. I thought maybe Musk I thought maybe Zuck because of Threads, and Laura Martin was talking about that. But then I remembered Sam Altman is expected to attend as well. And AI has been obviously the biggest thing in markets. Are people talking about AI there?
They're talking about AI, definitely. And it's so interesting because last year, it was Sam Altman who moderated the conversation with Elon Musk on the Saturday of Sun Valley, which was atypical. Traditionally, what happens is it's Warren Buffett on the Saturday. Every year, it's always Warren Buffett. But Elon Musk came, which was a surprise. He's not here this year, and he gave the keynote. Fast forward a year, I'm told by sources, Sam Altman is here. He's here in his capacity as OpenAI CEO, and he is talking about AI. And you know that they are the hot name, right? Everyone wants to talk about this. And I know attendees are kind of asking each other about it on arrival and saying, hey. So Sam Altman's really interesting. And then Threads. I've been playing a lot with Threads. I don't know about you guys. But this is really big for Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, and how quickly that story's turned around for that company.
It's amazing that they are so good at copying other people's products. I mean, you're too young to remember Friendster, Ed. I was on Friendster before MySpace, and then Facebook took over.
I know.
I guess.
Oh my goodness.
Instagram is one that they purchased, but Threads is just an exact copy of Twitter. What's the difference? Is there any discernible difference, Ed, since you are, popular on both forums?
That's kind. There's history with Threads. Sarah Fryer's book, she's the Bloomberg technology editor based in San Francisco. She wrote the book on Instagram called No Filter. But if you read it, there is a history of Meta, the parent company previously known as Facebook, exploring this idea. Threads is similar to Twitter. It's a largely text-based UX. There are no ads on it currently. I don't know if you guys saw the Evercore note yesterday.
Yeah,
we did.
We had Mark on.
Threads could generate Right. Oh, so I apologize.
That's okay.
So $8 billion by 2025. But here's the thing. There's no ads on it right now. Zero. So everyone's enjoying its use. It's a fresh space. It's just simple. You just communicate, you send threads, you repost, you join the thread. But what does that look like when there's ads? And I find that so interesting because it completely alters the character of the platform. And yet you already have the street out and saying, that's the future, ads, ads, ads. And so interesting how that plays out. But Mark Zuckerberg sent his first tweet in 11 years of the classic Spider-Man meme pointing at each other, right? And it's a complete copycat. They're identical.
All right. I have a question for you, Ed Ludlow. If there was one person you could sit down and talk to for an hour at Sun Valley, who would it be?
Jeff Bezos.
Ooh.
I've really loved living in San Francisco and covering global Silicon Valley over the last 5 years. And the story is always about people. And often the story or the arc of the story, the founder moves on and does something else. And Jeff Bezos is in that phase of his life and his career, right? He's super focused on Blue Origin. Blue Origin's having a lot of problems. I don't know if you saw the reports. Apparently they had an explosion during testing today. And I just want to know what he's up to. His body is completely transformed from the sort of 90s images that I saw when I was growing up, from the nerdy guy that was giving guest lectures. I just would love to sit down with him and be like, what are you up to? And what are you interested in? And he's one of the world's richest people, but at his heart, he's a technologist. And, he's now executive chair, but I think he's moved on from Amazon. So sorry for that long answer.
No.
That's where my head's at.
Can I say he's kind of buff?
He's totally buff.
And I think
there's something in common. Ed Ludlow and Jeff Bezos both living their best lives.
I'm just on the sidelines, guys, but thanks for having me.
Will we get a successor to Bob Iger? 20 seconds.
Yes, I mean Josh D'Amaro, the Parks chief, Dana Walden, the TV chief, they're here. That's the story. You want to watch for that. Do we get news? Who knows?
Yeah, that's a visual, though, for you, right? Speaking of a visual, you look great there in Sun Valley, but you're doing a great job, and so glad we could check in with you. Ed Ludlow, co-host of Bloomberg Technology at Bloomberg Television, on location in Sun
We're
Valley.
glad he's in this country.
He's pretty
I'm glad
amazing.
that we have him here.
You know what I
I wish
love
he'd spend more time in New York.
You know what I love? He really loves this space. Like,
Yeah.
he's so in it.
You can tell.
It's just really cool stuff. All right. Also in his space, when it comes to world and national news, this Tuesday's Dan Schwartzman. He's in the Bloomberg 1130 newsroom in New York City. Take it away, Dan.
Hi, Carol and Matt. I am in a nice little space here, right with you guys. It's good to be here. President Biden is in Vilnius, Lithuania for the 74th NATO summit. On the agenda, of course, is welcoming Finland to the bloc, also voting in Sweden as the newest member, and agreeing on the best path forward for Ukraine to gain membership. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg acknowledging the organization's intent to put Ukraine on a clear track to membership.
Today, we will make many decisions for an even stronger alliance. We will increase our practical and political support to Ukraine. This will bring Ukraine closer to NATO, where it belongs.
The summit continues into tomorrow. Stay with us for more live coverage. Officials closing the downtown area of Vermont's capital, Montpelier, as intense rainstorms continue to soak parts of the Northeast and New England, leading to massive flooding. The city was hit with over 5 inches of rainfall on Monday, setting a new record. Vermont Governor Phil Scott urging residents to stay vigilant.
The good news is the rain has stopped in some areas, but that does not mean waters will immediately recede. They may, in fact, continue to rise. And even though the sun may shine later today and tomorrow, we expect more rain later this week, which will have nowhere to go in the oversaturated ground.
Residents of Montpelier dealing with water levels ranging from knee-deep to even waist-deep. Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes may be getting out of prison earlier than originally anticipated. According to the Bureau of Prisons website, Holmes' release date from federal prison Camp Bryan will be occurring at the end of December of 2032. That's almost 2 years earlier than the 11-year prison sentence that was originally imposed. No details have been released as to why the release date has changed. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Dan Schwartzman, and this is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long at Bloomberg. A move higher for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ in the run-up to the CPI report tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. S&P extending its advance above the 4,000 mark, now at 4439, up 29 points today on the S&P. That was a gain of 0.7%. The Dow up 317, up by 0.9%. NASDAQ up 75, a gain there of 0.5%. 10-year yield, 3.97% with a 2-year, 4.88%. What about that market backdrop? Amanda Agati is Chief Investment Officer at PNC Asset Management, and she was our guest right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
When we look under the hood, the S&P 500 in general is not, really overextended or overvalued. We've been running a defensive playbook all year. That doesn't mean raise a ton of cash, sit on the sidelines. It just means start de-risking. So dial back some of those big bets.
And you can hear more of that conversation on the Bloomberg Business Week podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. Spot gold up $6.50 the ounce to $19.32. That was a gain of 0.35%. West Texas Intermediate crude topped its key 100-day moving average today. WTI $74.72 a barrel. Crude up 2.4%. Shares of Bank of America did advance today. Bank of America agreed to pay $150 million to regulators and $100 million to customers for improperly charging fees and mismanaging accounts and rewards. Today, Bank of America shares advanced by 1.3%. Recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 29, a gain of 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Master along with Matt Miller in for Tim Stenovic here on Bloomberg Business Week. And Matt, love Thomas Black of Bloomberg. He follows the global aviation world. And he reported in late May on how private flights in the U.S., they've declined from their pandemic highs, with takeoffs and landings dropping about 4.5% in the first quarter from a year earlier, and then the drop accelerating to about 9.3% in April, compared with about an 8.6% decrease in March. Even so, FAA coming out and saying private flying still more popular than in 2019, just before the pandemic. So
all of that is very understandable, right?
Yeah.
Because you were given a choice, I guess, if you had enough money, between sitting on a tube with a whole bunch of people that could get you sick.
Lots of touch points.
Or sitting in your own tube.
Yeah, what are you going to do? If you can afford it.
Of course. And I get that it's come down a little bit since we also don't wear masks as much anymore. We're not as worried about social distancing. But it's still going to be more than it was before COVID. Because now, if you're in an elevator and someone's coughing, or if you're on a train and someone's coughing, or on a plane, you think, I'm probably going to get sick now, and you want to avoid that. Whereas previously, you probably wouldn't have thought about it as much.
All right, well, we have a great voice when it comes to the private flying industry. Greg Brunson-Pitts is founder and CEO of Advanced Aviation, joining us on Zoom from Arlington, Virginia. And Greg, it is nice to have you back with us. It's been a few months. Talk to us about your world and what you're seeing.
Hey, Carol, it's great to be back with you, and great to be connected with you, Matt. We're seeing a bit of a downturn from what we experienced last year, which was a really big post-COVID boom. So we are seeing less aircraft in the air, and for us specifically, we're seeing less charter aircraft in the air.
So what do you think happens going forward? Is that just coming down because people are less worried about COVID? Are people actually focused on, carbon footprint issues and trying to find other means of travel? What's driving it, and how is it going to trend?
I think some people who were on a charter post-COVID and during COVID went back to the airlines. They tried out a charter, and maybe they just went back to the airlines. I think some people just maybe for their business, maybe they just don't need a charter anymore. And so there was just a big explosion of interest in our industry. And now maybe that has just shrunk back a little bit back toward what we would consider our industry, toward a bit of a normalcy. And going forward, I think we'll see some more market consolidation. What we've seen is some larger companies sort of buying up some fleets and consolidating some of the market, and I think that will continue.
Can you give us some ballpark figures? I mean, in terms of prices, and I know there are different ways to fly, and you've got different planes there behind you, so I'm sure different price classes. But just generally, like to charter a flight from here to Miami, or to charter a flight from here to London, what are we looking at?
It's really tough to nail down a price like that. It's very subjective to charter a plane. It depends on the day and the number of passengers, and is it a holiday? And
I mean, that's true with commercial flights too, but I would still be able to give you ballpark ticket prices. So what does it cost to fly from New York to Miami in a charter plane?
Yeah, and then what type of experience do you want, Matt? Do you want super luxurious? Do you want something more budget friendly? And so, we can, as a broker, a charter broker, we can really tailor your experience to what you want. We can offer a very luxurious trip, which would cost multiple tens of thousands of dollars. Or if you're very flexible on your dates and you want something more budget friendly, it would be less than that.
Well, and what's cool about, if you go to your website, I'm trying to think, oh wait, actually this is a different place, I think, called Advanced Aviation. There's multiple names. I guess we're just
Advanced Aviation team.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I guess we're just trying to figure out, like, if I say, okay, it's me and my husband and my daughter, and we want to go down to the Caribbean, let's go to Anguilla. Favorite island. So what would it cost us potentially if we were taking, a mid-level plane or something?
Let's go entry level. We just want to get Carol and Bill and Donna to Anguilla.
Not the real names.
What are they going to pay? I made up those names. What are they going to pay on the cheapest charter flight?
Yeah, and cheap is relative, right? So cheap for one person might not be cheap for another person. So that's a bit of a relative term, but I somewhere in the ballpark of $20,000 to $30,000 for that trip. But that's very subjective again, because it really depends on the time of year, and is it around a holiday, and so but we are, the good thing about using a broker like Advanced Aviation Team is we go out to the market of available aircraft, and we source an aircraft for you based on your specifications and what you're looking for, and what we determine would be the highest safety standards and aircraft and operators and crews that we've worked with before. So we will make suggestions based on specifications for your trip that you want to accomplish.
I want an ultra long range jet. That's what I want. It seats up to 18.
Go, yes.
I'm going for that one.
Flight attendant,
yes.
Full kitchen, Wi-Fi. Yeah.
I want that, up to 16
All
hours.
the bells and whistles.
Hey, Greg, who is right now spending money on trips? Is it really the corporate, like how much of your business is corporate space versus people maybe leisure?
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz around music tours are a big thing this summer. So we do a lot in that space. So touring groups, we do a lot with political campaigns. And so that season is really heating up for us. And we do some corporate. We do a lot with family office. And so that's a lot of our business. We do some, families, going to the beach on vacation and stuff. But really group travel and touring groups and things are really kind of, during the summer and these months are really what we're focused on.
I was going to ask you one last question. We've only got about a minute or so left here. What's your biggest cost component? Is it fuel? Is it maintenance? Is it labor? Like, what is it right now? And has some of that come down?
It really has. So a lot of those cost drivers from 2022 in terms of fuel and parts, aircraft parts were a big cost driver last year. There's been a big pilot shortage in our industry, and that really does continue into 2023, and that's kind of hanging over the industry in general. I know that's on the commercial side as well. So that continues to be an issue that we deal with. That certainly is a big cost driver and prohibitive sometimes to chartering a plane or meeting the schedule demands of a trip.
Well, great to get some time with you once again and really appreciate it. Greg, be well and ran out of time.
Thank you,
I
Carol.
think last time we talked a little bit about, he's got a great background because he worked with the White House Travel Office, so I can only imagine.
Sweet.
How crazy. Hey, Greg, come back soon. Greg Brunson-Pitts, founder and CEO of Advanced Aviation Team, joining us on Zoom from Arlington, Virginia. I remember once we were looking into it, like hopping from an island. It wasn't so crazy expensive.
Island hoppers, a little cheaper.
Yeah, those are a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Your company news headlines on Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Salesforce is raising prices for the first time in 7 years. After introducing artificial intelligence features, base prices will be going up about 9% across major software product lines in August. Salesforce shares advanced today by 3.9%. The UK's antitrust agency has agreed with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard to pause their ongoing London appeal over the $69 billion acquisition just minutes after an American court decision to move forward with the deal. Jennifer Rhee is a senior litigation analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence, and she was interviewed right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Microsoft talked a lot about really wanted to make strides in gaming in the mobile market, that people are moving to gaming on mobile devices, and that you really have Apple and Google as the two biggies out there, and that Microsoft would be able to, with more content and with its Game Pass, challenge those two who are really truly entrenched in gaming on mobile. And I think that's kind of what they're talking about when they're talking about these biggies.
And you can hear more of that conversation on the Bloomberg Business Week podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. Microsoft up 0.2% today. Activision was higher by 10%. A longtime Tesla bull, Blair analyst Ben Callow, says the EV maker may be in line for a relatively big revenue boost from opening its fast chargers to competitors. Tesla up today by 0.1%. Those are some of our top company stories, and this is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio and YouTube on Bloomberg Originals.
Matt Miller in for Tim Stenovec.
Yes.
You just got 2 weeks left with me, by the way.
You know, I'm going to miss you. I love Tim, though. I can't wait for him to come back.
I'm excited for Tim to come back, too.
Can I do a show with just all of you?
Yeah, well, you can come on.
You never invite me.
In the morning. I'm going to go back with Paul. You could join us.
Yeah, I'll think about it. All right, right now, joining us is Dan Schwartzman. He's got to check on world and national news. He's just like, you crazy people, let me do my news.
Let me do my news and get out of here because you two are crazy. I'm just kidding. The Justice Department now says that there isn't enough evidence to say that Donald Trump was acting in the scope of his employment as president when he made alleged defaming comments that author E. Jean Carroll had lied about being sexually assaulted by him. A previous opinion by the Justice Department concluded the opposite, but based on a clarification made by a D.C. court and a federal jury in Manhattan, the department has reversed itself. The new ruling now clears a final hurdle before a trial is set to begin in January. A Senate Homeland Security Subcommittee holding a hearing probing the PGA Tour in regards to the upcoming merger between the Tour and the Saudi Arabia-backed Live Golf Series. Some have accused the kingdom of sports washing its human rights record by spending billions of dollars in sports, including F1 racing, soccer, and funding Live. Ron Price, the PGA's chief operating officer, tells why Live golfers were not allowed to play in both leagues at the same time.
They could play for the new league, but they could not come back and forth to free ride off the work and platform of the collective membership they left behind. In August 2022, we were sued in an effort to invalidate our regulations. This created a fracture in golf unlike anything our sport had experienced in decades.
The hearing took place on Capitol Hill. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Dan Schwartzman. This is Bloomberg. Back to Carol and Matt.
Crazy Carol and Matt. All right. Thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate it. All right, folks, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week. It's a little bit of a wacky Tuesday. Can we do this story about Ford?
OMG. I cannot believe that story.
So it's a prominent executive over at Ford Motor and was arrested for allegedly attacking his wife at their suburban Detroit home and threatening to torch her designer handbags. No, say it isn't so.
Birkin bags, right? Do you have a Birkin bag?
I don't.
So if you did have one, would you be angry if your husband burned it?
Yeah, if you wanted to get at me, that's what he would do.
I mean, so the executive who is being arraigned was arraigned on Monday on charges of arson, preparation, and assault with a deadly weapon. Frank Louis Victor, or maybe since we're in America, it's Louis Victor. I'm not sure.
All right.
In any case, not only did he allegedly threaten to burn 2 Birkin bags with a lit butane torch, he also allegedly assaulted his wife with a Google Nest Hub device.
This is, okay, allegedly, but if so, not cool.
No, not at all. It's not cool to hit your wife with anything.
Correct.
But especially not with one of these devices. It's like a big, clunky monitor.
Yeah, we both have them at home, and we're like, yeah, that's not something you would...
That would hurt.
Apparently caused a laceration under her left eye that required hospital treatment. This was according to the police in a statement. The executive was interviewed by officers, made statements supporting the victim's statements, and was placed under arrest.
Can I just say, so aside from this case, right, which we don't know if that... we don't know the facts of the case,
I
but
like the lit butane.
I just want to say to everyone out there,
what?
Never talk to the police. Don't make any statements. The police